Welcome to today's edition of Sports Clinic Podcast. We're reviewing the Pakistan-New Zealand um, match. With me are two members of Cricket Stuff. We have Haris and Zain with us. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining. The clutch match today for Pakistan against New Zealand. Basically, they had to win to have any chance of qualifying for the semis, and ideally would have to do it either inside of 35 overs or win by at least 83 runs. None of that happened. New Zealand batted first, scored 401, and then Pakistan managed to chase it down in 25 overs. Obviously, it was rain, so it wasn't truly 25 overs. But really, there's two, maybe three people to talk about. This was the Fakhar Zaman Babar Azam match. So let's start from there. I'll go to Haris first. Let's talk about Fakhar. We started the World Cup. He was in scratchy form. He played against Netherlands, and then he was dropped. He was brought back in the last game. You can make an argument that he was dropped back. He was brought back probably a couple games um, too late. He should have been brought back against Australia on the same ground. But having said that, talk me through this innings from Fakhar. Talk me through the historical aspect, where this ranks, and just the pace of the innings and the innings itself. Take it away, Harris.
Hey, Sadi Raza. Hey, Dan. Thank you for having me on here. Yeah, I think very important game as you kind of described. I think Fakhar Zaman. I was actually watching this game with some of our Twitter friends, and I was just saying I feel like Fakhar Zaman, even with all the hype we give to our other batsmen, and other bowlers, other players, Fakhar Zaman kind of goes under the radar. What he's done for our country and what he's done for our cricket team, and the spark he's given us in so many moments where we're down. You go back to Champions Trophy. You talked about the historical element. He came in having played, I think that was his debut game, when he made against South Africa, he gave us a spark. He batted like someone I had never seen before, and then obviously the Champions Trophy final. So I think this is Fakhar Zaman's standard, and as you described, there was a lot of debate of whether he should be in the starting 11. Most of us were, rightly saying that he deserves a chance, and he should have been there at the World Cup. You could have made an argument that he could have been dropped for the Afghanistan game because he does struggle against them in Chennai and those kind of slower pitches. But as you said, he should have been in this playing 11 from the Australia game. If this was a big win today, but if we don't make it to the next round, we're gonna look back at, and we're gonna think, did this management and did this coach and captain get it right by not playing Fakhar? But if you talk about today, not much to talk about from our bowling. As you said, we concede 400, and then Abdullah Shafiq gets out early. And you look towards Fakhar, and you look and hope that he can do something magical, and that's what we saw. Even early on, you talk about Babar Azam. I felt like he was kind of he took on the attack a little bit, but then he kind of slowed down. He was, I think, 20 off 15 or 16, 23 off 16, I want to say. But then we saw him slow down a little bit. But then Fakhar Zaman was just playing in his own zone, and that's what I was actually talking when I was watching the game with my friends as well. That it just looked like Fakhar Zaman wasn't fazed by what was going on around him. He kind of created a bubble of himself that he just had a template he was going to follow. You saw an over where he played a maiden of Glenn Phillips, and we were like, hey, is this the matchup he's going to get out to? We've seen him sometimes before throw his wicket away, but he was just in that zone, and that ground was a beautiful batting wicket. And the way he took on the spinners, the fast bowlers, and yeah, I feel like words cannot describe what he's done for us today. One of the best ever innings for Pakistan. I would say probably the second best ever inning in a World Cup, after obviously in the normal, like in the '92 World Cup semifinal. But I just don't. I'm out of words for what he's done for us today. I think this was after conceding 400. I feel like the dressing room would have been the morale would have been down. As you said, it's a must-win game, but yeah, this Fakhar Zaman, I think, did something. I think we pulled a rabbit out of the hat, and yeah, we should feel grateful for what he did today, and we still have a chance in this World Cup, and we're not out. Yeah.
You mentioned the Inzamam World Cup, and what I would say, people always forget how key of a role Imran Khan played in that final, because he promoted himself up the order. He came in when they were basically 1 for 20 of 5 overs, and then Imran actually batted all the way through to the 43rd over and really took Pakistan to that 249 that they made. Then Fakhar Zaman, talk to me about his impact in this game, in the past couple games, and the decision to not bring him back. And could we, as you go through game to game, obviously looking back, it's easy to say, we should have brought him back earlier. But was there a role for him before to bring him back for Australia, or did you not want to mess with the Imam and Abdullah Shafiq partnership? But start with this game first.
I think in this game when we conceded 400, I was pretty sure that even if we come close somehow, it would be only Fakhar Zaman. Only he could do something magical that pulls his game off somehow. And from ball one, when he went after Trent Bolt, he just jabbed him, and I just somehow like had an idea that it could be his day. And all the risks he took were very calculated. At about from 1-6 he hit off, I think, Saudi, which was a bit of a mishit. All of his six went in the stand. He was on a mission. He knew what he was doing. Yeah, I think just before the game got interrupted again the second time, he hit two back-to-back sixes to
Yep.
Saudi in the. That means that both of them were aware that we need to be ahead on DLS, because I think the Trent Bolt over also went for nothing and the Darren Mitchell one. They were pretty aware of that, and I think this innings of Fakhar Zaman, for what I have seen, has to be the second greatest innings by a Pakistani in a one day, and first is also by him.
Yep.
The Champions
Trophy.
What impact he does in this team, he's just a match winner. The day Fakhar Zaman scores, Pakistan is winning the match. He just takes a game, away from the opposition, and we saw that. Yes, Babar from the other end, I feel he was a bit timid again in the middle. He was not going after Phillips. He struggled against center a bit, even despite after attacking him on the first ball. He got like in the middle overs, he slowed down a bit. But Fakhar Zaman, his impact was just unreal. And the second question, that should he play in the Australia game? I think that maybe he needed a break after so many failures. Asia Cup, Netherlands game, warm up. Maybe he needed a break, and I think that break also gave us Abdullah Shafiq, because at that time the management didn't drop him. If one more failure again in the India game, then maybe you never know that in the Sri Lanka game that iconic Abdullah Shafiq might never happen. So I believe that it was just destiny. It was bound to happen one day that Fakhar Zaman would come back.
No, you make a very good point that it's easy to look back, and you know that over where he hit those back-to-back sixes is interesting, because we've talked so much about how this team doesn't have game awareness, that they scored 20 off that over, and that was after the previous over, basically when the game got restarted, was 3 dot balls, and we ended up winning by 21 at the end, because there was only one other over after that, and we sitting here could see on the weather radar that certainly more weather was coming in. So I'm glad they did that. Talk to us about Babar now. Let's go to Babar, because I think and obviously this will depend on if we make it to the semis or not, but when we'll look back on this innings, I think this will end up being an underrated innings of his, because you're only ahead of the DLS if you only have 1 wicket down. Because I think if you were 2 wickets down, would be behind. And so he did his job in both keeping the scoreboard ticking, allowing Fakhar to play as many balls, but also really clean batting. It was pretty much a chanceless knock by him. His strike rate was pretty decent, 66 of 63. He hit 2 sixes, especially that one off that googly at the end. Talk to me about Babar. He's had a lot of criticism. Haris, Babar in this game, is this the Babar that we want, or do we want an even more aggressive Babar?
I think, Sadi bhai, you made a couple of good points, which I think Babar's inning today, you can kind of put it into 2 halves. I kind of mentioned that, he came in the power play, and I felt like he kind of tried taking advantage of that. As I mentioned, he was 23 off 16 or 17. He hit a boundary. He pulled one off Trent Bolt, I believe it was, and then he hit a 6 off Ish Sodi. But then we kind of saw him slow down. We kind of saw him go back to that same shell where, I was actually a little frustrated, and I'm sure so many other people were, that we were chasing 400, but he was still in a shell where he was happy to take singles and kind of nudge things along. But then, as you mentioned, once we kind of approached near the rain break, he kind of started changing gears again. And then that's when you saw the Babar Azam. And I think that's where the frustrations of so many fans comes with Babar Azam, because we see him bat with so much ability and potential, but it's almost like he chooses willingly to kind of, tone his skills down. And then that's where, our frustration comes, because he has so much more to offer to our team. And we've talked about this before, that it's not that he doesn't have to put that much pressure on himself or baggage on himself, because we have batsmen like Fakhar Zaman, we have batsmen like Abdullah Shafiq, we have batsmen like Rizwan, we have batsmen like Saad Shakil, who are, most of these guys are test players. Fakhar Zaman even has played test cricket for us. Regardless of that, they've performed well in this World Cup and ODI cricket for a while. So I think Babar Azam needs to just kind of free himself up a little bit, and as you described, because he has all the ability. And then the second half of his inning, where we come back after the rain delay, he hits 2 boundaries off Santner.
Back-to-back fours with a beautiful cover drive.
And then the 6. So that game awareness and that all the ability in the world on a ground like Bangalore, everything, the world is yours. That quote that we look at, the world is yours. But I feel like sometimes Babar chooses willingly to not kind of take that opportunity. He has everything in his hands. He has so much ability. And that's where my frustration always with Babar Azam has been, that Babar, you have everything that, millions of people dream of, but sometimes you kind of don't utilize the skills you have. You're so blessed, but maybe you don't utilize them. But I think today, overall, as I said, maybe the start was a little timid, but then he definitely made up for it at the end. And a win is a win. And as you mentioned, the important part here, which was being overlooked while it was going on, even like I said, I was frustrated, was the impact of not losing a wicket. Because as you were saying, Fakhar was batting brilliantly. At that point, we definitely couldn't have afforded to lose another wicket. So I think we realized that, the players realized that, and I think there was some messaging going on. We saw a couple pictures where they had a paper out in the middle as well when they were giving drinks, and they were looking at the numbers that they and the scores they needed to be at, and Babar made sure that while Fakhar is attacking, I don't want to throw away this end and at least keep the scoreboard ticking. So we also keep in mind the DLS par we have to be. So I was actually really surprised when the first rain break happened. We were 10 ahead. That was calculated perfectly. So that was partnership batting. So I have to give credit to both Fakhar and Babar for getting us in that position. At the end of the day, they got us in that position to win the game. At that point, we come back, as you mentioned. Babar hits a couple of 4s, Babar hits a 6, Fakhar hits 6s, and we're still 21s ahead. So overall, I think this was a good inning from Babar Azam. And I want to see more of that. I want to see more of that, especially with the way Fakhar is batting. And, we go into our last game against England. You have to kind of free yourself. You have to break the shackles, because you have so much more to offer to the team. So that's what, millions of people want you to do. You don't have to worry about carrying the team on your back. Just free yourself. And that's what how you bat best, I would say.
No, you mentioned he plays with the handbrake on, but you can clearly see he can take it off when he wants to. Zen, Babar's inning?
I think, again, as Haris mentioned, that I'll take this inning 2 halves. When he came in the power play, he was trying to be more aggressive, and he was successful in it. We know that Babar Azam has that skill set as good as any batsman in the world, but again, that he's just a bit scared to attack sometimes. Doesn't utilize his skills. He slowed down a bit, but in the end, when he came, that 2 back-to-back 4s to Santner and that 1 4 to Sodi, and he bowled a bad one, but he just 1 4 and again a 6. So it shows Babar Azam's ability, that we know that he lacks a bit power hitting, but when he wants to, he can, but he never does really. So I think this innings, yes, it might be a bit underrated, because I think it got shattered in the innings of Fakhar Zaman, but holding the other end and doing the job for Pakistan, I think was a good innings. And maybe Babar Azam's confidence would be high as well. Now he went not out. England game, next one again, do or die match, I think he would be very high on confidence this time.
The other thing that'll go unsaid, because of the fact that this was a rain-affected game, was they were ahead of the curve the entire time to chase 400. You look at New Zealand's power play. New Zealand had, I think it was 60-something, 66 in the first 10. We were at 75. Obviously, we'd lost to Abdullah Shafiq. But, our first 50 runs came in 46 balls, but then the first 100 runs came in 88 balls. The 200 runs came in 152 balls. There was an acceleration. And Kane Williamson, in his post-match press conference, also mentioned how Pakistan were continuously ahead of the curve. If you look at the 2 worm wheels as well, the Pakistan's worm was well ahead both on the angle and the number of runs. And so, assuming they'd kept wickets in hand, I think even the 400 chase on this wicket would have been not easy, but would have been managed. Assuming, again, Fakhar had gotten to his 200, Babar had gotten to his century, because the platform that they'd set was so good. Let's briefly touch on the bowling. I think the only you give up 400 runs. There's only so much you can talk about. But Wasim Jr., we were talking before you joined, Zain, and Haris made a good point. 10 overs for 60, so he held at least did his part to go run a ball. He's another player that took longer than expected to get into this team. Let's talk about two things. One, 4 pacers in this game. And then 2, let's talk about Wasim Jr. I'll start with you, Zain. Should he have come into the squad earlier, or was his introduction into this World Cup at the right time? And then 4 pacers moving forward, and this team, is this now the best team that we have going forward? Remember, Shadab is still not in this team. What do you think?
I think about Wasim Jr. First, I'd like to talk about his bowling, what he did today. Despite having so less opportunities throughout the years, just playing handful of games, and in this 3 World Cup games, he had an impact on all of them. He bowled brilliantly, and even I think about him coming in the 11. I think when Pakistan came in, their combination was, I'd say, fixed from like at least 3-4 months. They were Shadab Nawaz in 3 paces. It was fixed. They didn't want to break the combination because it was doing well. So I think they went with that. And Hassan Ali if Hassan Ali didn't bowl that well in the first 2-3 games, maybe they could have went to Basim Jr. But I still think that still the 4 combination thing is just because, like, I think maybe still you might need a leg spinner, because I think the Iftikhar and they're not as effective as spinners are. I think maybe you still need Osama Mir. I might see them dropping Hassan Ali for Osama Mir. I don't think this is probably the best 11 Pakistan. The spin in this game was not up the mark at all, and it has not been since
Throughout the World Cup, sure.
Throughout the Asia Cup, it has been terrible. But I still feel like Osama Mir, he doesn't have that consistency, but when he hits the right areas, he's effective. We saw that in the South Africa game and a couple of other games as well, that he is effective, but he just needs to hit the right areas. And I still see him playing the next game.
Haris, your thoughts on this 11, and then obviously
I think when you look at I think we concede 400 and then New Zealand concede 220 odd overs. There's not much to talk about bowling, but right. I think some Pakistani fans are a little critical of our bowling. I mean, we sometimes we have the right to be, but even today, I mean, if we're going to be critical of our bowling, why not be critical of New Zealand's bowling? They were not very good at either, right? So sometimes you just have to accept that, small ground, good batting wicket, and, every batsman who, applied themselves was able to really, be successful. If you talk about Wasim Jr., I think he's someone who's always performed for Pakistan. He doesn't have the flashiest of PSL numbers or around the leagues, but he's someone, whenever we've asked him to step up for our country, he's stepped up. So someone like me, a player like that, and, he's a very good fielder, has a lot of utility. We'll always have utility in the Pakistan team that, he steps up when it matters. I think you talk about he's been a little hard done by. Could we have brought him earlier? I think so. We could have brought him a little early, especially with the way our bowling was doing. We conceded 340 against Sri Lanka. We conceded 370 against Australia, 367, I believe it was. We could have thought about bringing him in earlier, especially with the way our spinners were doing. 2019, I just see a lot of parallels. We took a little while to get our 11 right, and I think we still haven't found our best 11. If you look forward to the last game we have, I think you go with 4 pacers because it's in Kolkata and there's a chance of a reverse swing there. And, there is a chance that, let's say we put on 300 plus on the board. If we get reverse swing, we can bowl England out for 150, 170 odd and, win by that margin we need. So I do go with 4 pacers. I would be tempted to bring Shadab Khan in because, maybe that's something we can, if we need a quick fire 50 odd or something, he's shown that PSL where he has flashes. So maybe bring in Shadab Khan for Fakhar Zaman, but I definitely go with 4 pacers. It's the last game. I back ourselves with the reverse swing, and I back ourselves that these 4 can do a job. I know Hassan Ali maybe was a little disappointed today. Shaheen was disappointing, but then in Kolkata, if we start getting reverse swing, these guys can be our match winners. So I go in with the 4 pacers. I try to bring Shadab Khan or lead the same bowling competition, but maybe I bring in Fakhar Zaman for Shadab because a little bit of that bowling. Depth he can provide, and the batting, again, as I'm saying, the way Fakhar is batting, Babar found himself in a good rhythm. I don't think we need Agha necessarily coming in at 7 or 6, vice versa with etc. We can counter Shadab and maybe use him as a floater, especially consider the fact that we want to up our net run rate. If that's the case we're going for, we can maybe utilize Shadab's utility. So that's what I think overall.
Last couple questions. One, was this the most impressive win of this World Cup? I know it was 25 overs, but still you have to give credit to the way they chased and the pace of the chase. And then two, it's a two-part question. One, do you think we'll make it to the semis? Two, if we don't make it to the semis, how much regret will we have over lost opportunities in earlier games? Zain, I'll start with you.
Can you read the first question?
The first question was this the most impressive win of this World Cup?
I think for sure this was an impressive one. This Sri Lanka game was special too. You chased 345. That's not an easy task either. But I think this game, the situations, like it's a do or die game. You're playing New Zealand. You're chasing 400. Scoreboard pressure. You have the pressure from back home. People are criticizing your captain, your selection. Everything is getting questioned. And in such scenarios, Fakhar Zaman, who had just been brought back just one game before, and he comes up and plays an all-timer. I think this was definitely the most impressive. And this is probably the best batting display we have seen of Pakistan in a long, long time. We have never seen them play this aggressive. And about the regret thing, I think it would hurt a lot. I think people expected this World Cup to be ours. Our team was red hot favorites before Asia Cup. And I think the regret, the biggest regret people will have, like that South Africa game, the LBW, that would hurt a lot to people, and maybe the Afghanistan game as well. But again, I think every World Cup hurts a lot if you get eliminated like that, and it would be second World Cup in a row that we miss out on. So it would be a tough pill to swallow for the fans, but it is what it is.
Haris?
Yeah, I think for me, most impressive, if you look at the word impressive, it has to be the win against Sri Lanka. Chasing 345, we lose Imam ul Haq and Babar Azam early on, and at that time, especially Imam, we were counting a lot on. And Abdullah Shafiq was a debutant, and Mohammad Rizwan kind of carried us. And then you had a good knock from Saud Shakil as well. So that was the most overall team win and an impressive win, where I was like, 2 down at 30 odd chasing 345. I think most people had written us off, and we won. This win was I credit to one person, Fakhar Zaman. So this was maybe one of the best individual performances, but I don't know if this was such a big impressive team win. So for me, I think the Sri Lanka win was
plus the Sri Lanka one. People forget how well the bowlers did in the death overs. I think Sri Lanka only scored 60 off the last 10.
Right. So that was the most complete and impressive. I think I have no hesitancy in saying 2.5 players showed up today. Fakhar by far, and then Wasim and Babar Azam you can talk about. I think if you talk about chances for the semifinal, I'm not gonna play spoil sport and say we're not gonna make it. So I'm backing our team to make it. I was actually talking to my friend. He's my best friend. He's Indian, and I was like, hey, it's tough to see Sri Lanka beating New Zealand in Bangalore and on this kind of pitch. And he's like, didn't South Africa lose to Netherlands last year, and you guys needed like a miracle as well? So in the 2022 World Cup, so he's like, this kind of stuff has happened to you guys before. So I think we've been in darker places, and somehow our team manages to come out. So I think we're all going for Sri Lanka this Thursday. Even rain, we wouldn't mind some rain that gets us through. Rain or Sri Lanka, either way, we'll take our chances. And I think in terms of regret, I think absolutely, if we don't make it, for sure we'll look back. The South Africa game, the Afghanistan game, captaincy could have been better. The Australia game, team selection, even we were on target to chase 370. Putting that aside, we needed 100 off the last 12 overs with Iftikhar batting.
100 of 70 odd just before FC got out.
I think we have plenty of regrets and plenty of things that we'll look back that if things don't go our way, it was all in our hands, and we kind of screwed it again. And I think I've kind of talked about that under this management, under this leadership, this has kind of been a repeating pattern. So especially Mickey Arthur, I don't want to take away any blame from Mickey Arthur. We made the same mistakes in 2019. We were the 5th team. We got out on net run rate to New Zealand. And if history repeats itself again, then we kind of have to look at ourselves that, hey, are we doing something wrong by, having the same people in charge and expecting different results? So a lot to think about and ponder. But right now I want to have positive thoughts. And as I said, rain and Sri Lanka win either one. Hopefully we can bring it home against England.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen.